Hey, it's me, Tommy, and this is the Aputure 300X, Aputure's new 300D Mark II in a bicolor format. Now for me, I came from the Aputure 300D Mark I, so me experiencing the 300X firsthand is an upgrade to a bicolor 300D from Aputure, but also with all the incremental upgrades that came from the redesign of the 300D to the 300D Mark II. So this is a little bit of a review of that redesign as well as the 300X and why I really like the 300X and kind of some of the things that I've experienced while using it over the past week at least. The first thing I really like about the 300X is the fact that it's a bicolor light. This is Aputure's first COB light that offers a tungsten variant since the Aputure 120T that was released several years ago. So this is really exciting for people that need tungsten light coming out of these chips. And that's going to be for people that are doing work that requires high color accuracy, because tungsten is just always a lot more color accurate than daylight, at least coming out of these LED chips. Using tungsten, you're going to get significantly higher CRI, TLCI, and SSI than you are going to get out of daylight. So it's nice to have that option built into something like the 300D Mark II form factor. Another reason I really like the Aputure 300X is that it still works with Aputure's handy dandy little remotes. I love these things. This is the best remote control for any of the lights that I've worked with. If I could, I'd have all the lights in my studio hooked up to this remote. Obviously the 300X works with it. I've got a 120D Mark II over there and another 120D Mark II right here. And over here I've got this. This is not an Aputure light, but it's not hooked up to a remote and that bothers me. But I do have it hooked up to a light switch over there. But Aputure's Nova is coming up pretty soon too, and I hope that one still works with the remote. I'm in the middle of a studio rebuild right now, and I chose to use Aputure lights in as many places as possible because I want to have one little command center to, handle all the lights and things that I need to do if possible. I don't want to connect my phone to all my lights because I've got a bunch of different brands of lights, and I've got cameras and gimbals and all kinds of different accessories that require me to connect my phone. I mean, the app is really cool, especially if you're trying to manage a whole stadium full of lights, but in my home studio, these little remotes, I've got them in drawers, and I think I'm just gushing at this point, but I'm happy that they decided to keep the integration with these remotes instead of just going to a fully app system like a lot of lights have done. Something else I really like, especially coming from just the 300D Mark I, is the lightning clamp and the way the whole ballast is designed. You can power the 300X with 2 VMAP batteries or with just 1 VMAP battery. So I've got 2 on there now, and now I've got 1. You can also obviously power with AC, but I like how there's no extra ballast and there's no extra power supply that has its own noisy fans. It's just all one built-in huge ballast, and there's no fans. It's completely silent. And the head of the Aputure 300X, you can actually turn the fans off, or put the fans instead of full blast all the time mode, you can put it into auto mode. So the fans will only turn on when it gets too hot. And if you have the fans turned into auto mode and you have the 300X, somewhat low powered, then the fans are just never going to turn on. And even when they do turn on, it's still super quiet. So I really like that you can have such a powerful light act so quietly, because a lot of the lights that I work with and have used and reviewed have fans, and when you get to lights that are as powerful as the 300X, you're going to expect really loud fan noise. You just kind of brush it off because you're like, oh, well, the light's going to be really far away, so the fan noise isn't going to matter. No, it matters. And so I'm really glad that they put the thought in to make the fans very quiet. It also has an improved reflector over the 300D Mark I. Apparently, it reflects better and it makes it brighter. I think it just looks cooler, but of course we're also going to measure it. And the way they've integrated bicolor into the 300X, I really appreciate. So most lights, you can just see the obvious striping of the LED chip when there's a bicolor variant. So when you use an optical modifier, you then emphasize those imperfections in the LED chip and you just have them projected onto your wall. So you can't really use optical modifiers with COB lights that have stripes of different colors on them. But what Aputure has done is they've created this bubbly little optical element that mixes all the different colored chips perfectly so it works with all of their optical modifiers, like the spotlight and the Fresnel 2X. So you don't have any issues with weird bands or projections when you're using those optical modifiers. And it's the first light of this form factor that has ever considered to do something quite like that. Another issue that has plagued bicolor lights for a very long time is you only get maximum power at the middle of the road, which would be like 4500 Kelvin, which isn't quite daylight and isn't quite tungsten, so nobody really wants to use that color. The only time you'd be using that color is when you need maximum output, but then you have to adjust all your other lights to be 4500 degrees Kelvin. But what they've done is they've created two different modes of how this light mixes color. One is the consistent intensity mode, which will maintain the same brightness throughout the entire color range, and the other mode is maximum output. So you will get that maximum brightness at 4500-ish degree Kelvin. So having the option to have maximum output or just to have consistent intensity is a really clever way to adjust that problem, and I'm glad that they did the math and implemented that. It's just such a simple solution that, why haven't other lights done this yet? So I'm really glad that they give you the option to control that instead of one or the other like all the other brands have done. So my question is it worth it to upgrade to the 300X from Aputure's 300D Mark I, all things considered, price, form factor, features, output, and color? Let's find out. On my right, I've got the 300D Mark I, and on my left, I have the 300X. So the 300D is down at its lowest setting right here, but the 300X can go all the way down to here, 1% power. And that's a really important feature for me because I like to have this kind of dark and moody environment in my studio in particular. So being able to have low power is just as important as being able to have super high power. Now, the 300D Mark I can get a little bit brighter than the 300X if we're going for like 5600 Kelvin. At 5600 Kelvin, I want to see how much brighter the 300D is than the 300X, but I also want to see what the maximum output difference is between the two of them. Oh, and if you're wondering what's going on behind me, the backdrop just came in. I installed it last night, and we're gonna go over that in my next video. So make sure you're subscribed. All right, so we're gonna measure these things at 1 meter away. Now, something that is really bothering me already is in the 300D Mark I, to use the AC power supply, you have to turn on the AC power brick thing, and that has a fan that is constantly whirring and it's pretty noisy. It's one of the reasons I prefer to use VMAP batteries with the 300D Mark I. But to make sure we're getting maximum output from both of them and the voltage and the power of the battery doesn't affect it, we're going to be using AC power for these tests. I've got the 300D Mark I over there and the 300D Mark II over here. First test is going to be a bare bulb with no reflector test, and 100% power, exactly 1 meter away. I already measured it. We're getting 10,300 lux at 5,740 Kelvin. 98 TLCI, 96 CRI, very good color quality, obviously. And over here, we're getting 4,800 lux with a 5,490 Kelvin, so it's only off by about 100. CRI 97.3, TLCI 97.6. Actually, I don't think I'm in maximum output mode. I think I'm just in consistent intensity mode. Let's move it into maximum output mode. Oh wow, now we're getting 7,425 lux at 5488 Kelvin, CRI 97.3, TLCI 97.4. Yeah, that's a staggering difference, which is only a 25% reduction if you're going for daylight temperature light. But you also have the ability to go down to something like 4,500 Kelvin, and down at 4,500 Kelvin, we're getting 9,300 lux. So not quite as bright as the 300D Mark I. And we are at 100% output with maximum output mode. That leads me to my next question. How effective is this shiny new reflector? 10,700 lux with the old style reflector. 31,255 lux with the new style reflector. It's super effective. In fact, even on the 300D Mark I, we go from 12,300 lux with the old style reflector to 40,400 lux with the new style reflector. That about does it for the measurements I wanted to do. I'm not going to go too much more into detail about lux, color temperature, color quality, because Curtis Judd already did an excellent job of that. You can go watch his video if you want. I'm going to get back into the other differences between the 300D Mark I and the 300X. You know, speaking of Curtis Judd, one thing that's bothered me throughout the filming of this video so far, and one of the reasons the mic has been so close to my face in the frame, is because the fan of the 300D Mark I's power ballast has been getting super annoying. It is so loud, and I hate it. Any additional room and fan noise is just gonna mess up your audio. And I really like to have super crispy, really clean audio. Another difference between the 300D and the 300X, the little handbrake style knob on the side of the 300D for adjusting the head and tightening it down. This little handbrake style is really nice compared to these little twisty locks on the older style. Like, you can squeeze them down as hard as you can, but I mean, you might even break them if you try and tighten them down too hard with like a wrench or something. If you have a heavy modifier on it, like a big softbox or something, it's just gonna be too much for the old style yoke. So the new style is a lot better. Also, the accessories are a little bit more firmly mounted to the new 300D. Check it out. There's no wiggle sound. As opposed to the old 300D. It wiggles, it shakes, and it rattles because the reflector is kind of loose on there. They solved that problem with the new 300X. Or maybe the 300D Mark II design, I don't know. And one final comparison here is the cases that they come in. The 300D Mark II and X case has been redesigned from the old version, the 300D Mark I case. This is the old 300D Mark I. And here's the 300X. The 300X case weighs, I don't know, maybe a tiny bit less, it actually feels like. It looks better, and it's a lot more rigid. You can stand on this thing. This one is a soft case and it'll crumple. Even the power cable is better on the 300X. Pull it right out of there. It's the nice PowerCon style cables, where the 300D Mark I interface, it's like the old style plugs. I mean, it's better than just a regular plug that goes into a normal light because it's got this little like security clip thing in there, but it's not the standard PowerCon style connection that I really like. So I mean, I could go on. There's other things, but the 300X is just so much more of a professional tool than the old 300D Mark I. If you do have a 300D Mark I, do you need to sell your light to go get a new 300D Mark II or 300X? Maybe, probably. If yeah, I would do it. I don't see myself using the 300D inside this studio ever again, simply because how loud the fans get. It's too noisy. The 300X is going to be a permanent fixture in my studio now. So that's my review. I'm really happy with the 300X. I think they did an excellent job with, one, the redesign from the old 300D Mark I, but two, how they implemented bicolor into their design and how their company is maturing. You know, they started off making super innovative tools and then they've just made them more innovative. I'm very impressed. Anyways, thanks Aputure for sending these out for me to review. I really appreciate it, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Stay classy.
I'm running out of patience. I'm about to make my move right now. Yeah, I came up straight from the bottom. Put on the gas, yeah, that's the throttle. I get the smash cause I get the bottle. These people mad cause I get the mile. I'm changing lanes in my auto. Get to the bag is my motto.